The venue tries to pull a fast one. The policies are extremely unfair and seek only to exploit the artists who bring them revenue to begin with.
Y'all have a contract in place, and it sounds like you're trying to usurp the contract.
Your booking agent signed the fucking contract!
You know, this is why I'm just like, I wish I could be everyone's lawyer, because they don't know that it's... What's up, fam? I'm top music attorney Miss Crystal. Today I'm reacting to TankTheTech's video. Bands need to stop lying to their fans about merch. I'm intrigued. I hope you are too. Let's jump into it.
So we've made videos talking about merchandise stuff in the music industry before, and we're gonna do it again because I am so tired of bands bending the truth and lying about these merch situations and stuff to get like their fans like sympathetic and on their side, that I want to talk about something that just happened yesterday and kind of break this down and maybe get some information out there that people don't know, because this is a huge deal in the music industry right now.
I'm ready.
But without me like diving in and introing super long and stuff, let's just talk about what happened. I'll show you the screenshots and then I'll dive in here. I will preface this by saying I have no idea who this band is that we're going to be talking about in this video. This is just something that came to my attention and I want to talk this into a bigger topic. So I do want you to know that this is not a like biased personal vendetta. I don't know the guys in this band. I don't know anything about their music. It's just the situation itself that needs to be called out and talked about. So 20 hours ago, there's a band called Movements that was doing a show at the Agora Ballroom in Cleveland, Ohio. And before their show, they posted this Instagram story that says, "Attention Cleveland. Due to policies enforced by tonight's venue, any tips made at merch table will go directly to the venue staff," remember that for later, "and not the bands and touring crew. Venue management are unwilling to compromise, will not split tips with touring crew who are working hard all night, and will not waive merch cuts for the bands. These types of policies are extremely unfair and seek only to exploit the artists who bring them revenue to begin with. This is not the fault of the venue staff, and we ask that you all please treat those staff members with kindness and respect. But if you would like to support the touring crew tonight, please use the QR codes provided. All tips collected via the QR codes will be evenly dispersed between the bands in the touring party." On their next slide, they have QR codes for Venmo and PayPal. And then on the next slide, they have a picture of their merch table. And it also says QR codes should also be in front of our tip box in the middle of the merch table. There are a lot of problems with this. And we've talked about this a lot because it's been a hot topic in the music industry. Merch fees. Where are the tips going? Why are, you know, certain venues getting tips or stuff like that? So I feel like we really need to dive into this because even this statement alone is not true. Their first line: "Due to policies enforced by tonight's venue, any tips made at the merch table will go directly to the venue staff and not the bands and touring crew." That is not true. It's not an outright lie, I guess, if you want to really break it down. It's kind of stretching the truth a little. It's not going to go directly to the venue staff. It's going to go directly to the staff from the venue that was selling the merchandise for the bands. So it's not like all these tips are going to be split up between all the people working at the venue, like the security guards, the bartenders, and ticket sellers, stuff like that. When we're talking about tips at the merch table, it goes to the people that are selling the merchandise. And a lot of venues do have staff that will sell bands merchandise for them if in the contract it says it's a venue sell and not an artist sell. For anybody that's not familiar, a venue sell literally means the venue is going to be selling the merch. The merchandise manager is going to count in their merch with them. They display it, they sell it, and at the end of the night, they do their numbers and all that and settle out. Artist sell means that the artist merchandise manager is 100% responsible for everything. They count in, they display, they sell all night, and then they count out and settle with the venue. So in situations like this, where it is a venue sell situation, it means that the venue is going to provide sellers for the bands. Now, those people may work at the venue, or they may be a third-party company in that area that professionally vends at these shows.
All right, so as an entertainment attorney, what I can tell you is that he also just made this point, the agreement with the venue. So there may be different deals, and this usually has to do with also door fees, right? So we do the deal on how is the band getting paid? Are they getting something from the bar? Are they getting something from the door? And there can also be contracts and agreements in regards to what happens with the merch sales as well. Now, it's not just with the venue, PS, right? So there's agreements going back with the label, right? So if these artists are signed with labels. There's an agreement in place in regards to how much the label gets from the sales of the merch, even though the label's not on the road with the artist. Anyway, let's see where he's going with this.
Eldervelt just asked a great question. Can bands choose what option they want? Sometimes. But most of the time, it all comes down to the contract that the booking agent has negotiated and signed with the promoters at the venues. Most of the time, ahead of time, you already know whether, as a merchandise manager, you will already know whether you are selling that night or whether they are. Or in some situations, you may advance your show, and even though it's marked as a venue sell, they may just ask you, do you want to sell yourself? That happens too. Sometimes it's an option, but most of the times it's in the contract. The next part of this statement said, venue management are unwilling to compromise, will not split tips with touring crew who are working hard all night, and will not waive merch cuts for the bands. Well, yeah, it's in the contract. If it's in the contract that the venue is selling and there's a merch fee, your booking agent signed the fucking contract.
Loud noises!
God, I don't know how many times I have to say that again in one of these.
For you content creators out there, his use of unauthorized, right, copyrighted content right there was good, right? It was under fair use. I would give a quick analysis on that, I'd say, because he used it as he's making his educational point in a parody kind of way. Under the Copyright Act and fair use, you can get away with using other people's content in certain situations. But here's the thing. He's making a point. He goes, it sounds like y'all have a contract in place, and it sounds like you're trying to usurp the contract. Just so you guys know, this is a legal claim that comes up all the time. When someone has a contractual obligation and they do something to prevent the other party from getting what y'all agreed to, that's called a breach of good faith and fair dealing. It could also be an interference with business opportunity. Now, I'm taking the facts of what is being said as true, okay? I don't know anything other than what I'm seeing in this video, but I can at least share that from personal experience. Top Music Attorney is your #1 legal resource for artists, producers, and record labels. Get contract templates, one-on-one legal advice, free master classes, and everything you need for your music business. Go to topmusicattorney.com.
And let's call this out. These bands know ahead of time. Merchandise managers advance ahead of time. Booking agents give contracts to the band's managers. These are not surprise situations where bands just show up and are like, oh, well, let me rephrase that. There might be some situations where, like, at the small local level, DIY shows where bands show up and then somewhere at the end of the night, like, the promoter or the venue tries to pull a fast one. It's like, oh, you owe us 20%. That is why I always say, know what's in your contract. If there is no contract, don't fucking pay it. But a band at this level playing it like,
Know what's in your contract, but have a contract.
like the Agora, there's going to be a contract. So you can't say venue management is unwilling to compromise and drop merch fees and stuff when you have a contract on it. Next part of it says these types of policies are extremely unfair and seek only to exploit the artists who bring them revenue to begin with. I really don't have a problem with that because I actually mostly take the band sides on a lot of this. I do think a lot of merch fees are very unfair for the most part. There are, you could argue the fact that if this venue didn't book them to have a show, they wouldn't have people in there to begin with. So you could make that argument. But again, it goes back to the contracts. This kind of stuff will never change unless booking agents start arguing more for their bands to not have merchandise fees, which will probably never happen, especially at Live Nation, AEG venues, stuff like that. So while I do...
Well, yeah, and that's because Live Nation, Ticketmaster, they actually don't make very much money on the actual tickets. They make their money from ancillary income. They make it from the fees, right? For being on the platform. You guys know what I'm talking about. And by having these deals for the touring, for the merchandise. So no, that's not going away.
I agree that these policies can be unfair. Again, it's been negotiated in the contract by your booking agent. So, sorry. They finish off by saying this is not the fault of the venue staff, and we ask that you all please treat those staff members with kindness and respect. Well, that's funny because you literally said venue management and tips are going directly to venue staff. So if you have diehard fans, how do you expect your fans to not be mad at the venue staff when you said that the tips are going to the venue staff and then saying it's not the fault of the venue staff? Just weird conflicting wording there. If you would like to support the touring crew tonight, please use the QR codes provided. All tips collected via the QR codes will be evenly dispersed between the bands and the touring party. Really? Like, for real? Because the way that reads is that you guys are taking all of the tips from merch and splitting them with every single band? I don't know about that, dude. If I found out that there are bands out there headlining bands that are splitting all of their tips with the other bands and crew too, that would blow my mind. I don't know if I believe that. Just their band and crew, sure, I could kind of believe that. But everybody? That's wild.
Hey now, but let's play devil's advocate for a sec because I haven't seen that we've seen a contract, okay? So let's pretend there was not a contract. And let's pretend the venue decided to pull a fast one and they just found out about this, right? Even to your point, you said that maybe this could happen at the end of the night. And so if someone did not have a written contract, here's what does happen in the music business. I've had clients who have a surprise kind of situation and they don't know what to do because someone just tells them something and they go, let's pretend it was the venue. Hey, we're just letting you know that we're going to pay our people all the tips. You guys and your team, you don't get anything. And this wasn't agreed to. But now someone is just unsure what to do because they go, I'm not the party here. I'm not the one that has the negotiation power, right? I got to show up. I needed to do a show. So there could be a situation where something like that would happen, in which case, if you go to air out your grievances on social media, do we necessarily have a problem with that? Well, the only other consideration might just be defamation, right? Are you talking in a certain kind of way that the venue may not like, and it's not true? Here's the thing. The best defense to a defamation claim is that what you said, in fact, was the truth.
On the next slide, they did provide their QR codes, as we saw. And then in the next slide after that, I just want to point out something wild. They have specifically said in their announcements, all the tips are going to the venue staff, is what they said. But if you look, there's 2 tip boxes on the table. The tip box on the left says tips, and really small under it has an asterisk that says vending crew. The tip box on the right says, my brother in Christ, tip me or they won't play Daylily. Daylily is one of the biggest songs by this band, and I only know that from looking at Spotify. And they also have their QR codes on the table. So let's just say tips are going to the vending crew and not the band and the touring crews and stuff like that. They said that the venue management was willing to uncompromise. I'd say that's a fucking huge compromise. They didn't have to do that. The vending crew actually let you put your own tip jar on the table and even marked the other one that it's going to the vending crew. They let you put your QR codes for your PayPal on the table. Now here's where this gets really interesting. I did my due diligence. I did my research. I talked to somebody that I know from Cleveland that was actually at this show. And they told me that the merchandise manager for Movements allegedly was at the merch table most of the night, standing to the side, yelling at everybody that was buying merch to not tip because tips were going to the sellers and not Movements. That is a dick move. That's wild. I also spoke to somebody that has association with some of the people that were vending this show. Now, this is off the record, third party, he said, she said. So take whatever I say with a grain of salt, but I do trust this person. They told me that the merchandise manager for Movements was slightly difficult to work with and only attempted to advance the show the day before, which is a very difficult situation for local vending crews to be put in because...
Well, you know, and I my understanding is that this is a tour manager with lots of experience, so he's probably going to say something like this. But here's the thing. I don't know which venue it is, but I don't think they're going to want to have you back. All right, if this is how you're behaving, if you do have a contract, let's say, if you do have an agreement, and you say that you're going to do the tips in a certain kind of way, and then you're there at the venue, behaving in a certain way that's going to prevent the venue from getting those tips. And if it's true that the band didn't actually even try promoting this until the day before, also just, you know what I'm saying? They're not going to want to book you again. You always need to act in a way where someone's going to want to work with you again.
For a lot of tours, when I was a merchandise manager, I was advancing 7 to 10 days out for everything because you have to go over how much merch you're bringing, what kind of space you have. Like, there's so much information that goes into a merchandise advance that nobody ever thinks about, that like advancing a day ahead of time it puts people in a very weird position. Now, if...
Oh, he's talking about something else. Never mind. I thought he was talking about promoting as in advancing. My comment was about promoting.
If this is true and this person would have advanced way earlier, maybe they could have gotten management involved and negotiated this whole tipping thing instead of the day before. But that also means the day before, if they advanced it, they knew that the venue was going to be selling and they could have tried to do something about it. The last thing is that this show took place a day after Powerwolf and Unleash the Archers were at the Agora, the tour that I just got home from. And I spoke to Powerwolf's merchandise manager and said he had absolutely no issues with this venue and they were absolutely fantastic. So, and like, I'm actually upset when I see bands like that do this kind of stuff because it is very untruthful. It gets their fans fired up trying to be pit against a venue when It's not the full truth, and it's not even close to being the truth. It's also illegal. And I'll break this down really quick too. Taking tips from people that are doing a service is actually illegal in most states in the US. And I know I already know there's one of you out there that's like, nah, I'm not tipping a person for handing me a shirt. Cool, dude, you don't have to. I saw a lot of those comments in my last video about merch where it's like, I don't need to tip a merch person. No, you don't have to, really. You're not expected to. If you don't want to, don't. But some people do. Taking tips from somebody that is getting tipped as part of their service is actually illegal. This was in the state of Ohio. Tip pooling is a process by which employees who receive gratuities pool the total amount of tips received together. Under the FLSA and Ohio law, an employer may require tipped employees to participate in a tip pooling arrangement based on an established formula. However, a valid tip pool may not include any employees who do not typically earn gratuities. So that means that even if a band tells their new merchandise manager, you have to share your tips with everybody on this tour, that is illegal because nobody else on the tour is doing a job that works off of gratuities. Unless a legal exception applies or there is a valid tip pool in place, an employer may not require an employee to hand over their tips. In addition, a manager, supervisor, or owner is not permitted to retain your tips to take part in a tipping pool. In the state of Ohio, everything that they wanted to do is illegal anyways. And I'm going to say the same thing right now that I've said so many times, that so many other merch people have said too. And I'm just going to look at the camera. Any crew person watching this, any band member watching this, any tour manager, production manager, front of house, guitar tech, drum tech, I don't care what your job is. If you work for a band, if you're upset because you're not getting tips that the merch person is getting, go sell the fucking shirts. That's it. That's what it comes down to.
All right, quick thing. I'm licensed here in Arizona, not in Ohio, and the laws are different across the different states. However, he was talking about an employee, so little distinction here. Typically, someone who is going on a quick tour, they may or may not be an actual employee, right? So a W-2 employee versus a 1099 contractor. So the laws can be different if someone is an actual employee versus a contractor. But what we are going back to is just, whether you have a contract and whether you're abiding by that contract. Like, it really is that simple.
You're upset because you are not getting tips at your job. Go do the fucking touring job that lets you get tips. It's as easy as that. That's it. And listen, I'll be honest. Right now, merch people are making great money on the road. Merch is actually a very lucrative job on the road now because 10 years ago, 12 years ago when I was doing merchandise, tipping wasn't that big at merch because a lot of the merch companies were actually giving the merch managers a percentage of what they were selling. So, incentives to hustle and sell and stuff like that. Tips weren't really a big thing. Since the pandemic, tipping has been huge because merch managers aren't getting paid well. Like, I'll tell you right now, dude, most of the merch manager jobs that I see that are getting offered right now are like $150 to $200. That's like a third of what a lot of other techs are getting paid on other jobs. So how do they supplement that? How do they entice these merch people to work for them? Say, you can take the tips. But now you have bands saying that it's unfair. Like, I've literally seen bands when they find out how much their merchandise manager is making, they just think it's unfair. Oh, our merch manager is making more than us. Cool. Fire your merch manager, go sell your merch yourself. The last few times I've seen Brand of Sacrifice, that's what they've done. Well, the last time I saw them, they did have a merchandise manager, but the couple times before that, like, they literally, them and other bands sit at their merch table and they sell everything because they're trying to make money. That's what it boils down to, dude. If you're in a band or you're a crew guy that doesn't like the fact that somebody else is working a job that gets tips, go do that job that's making tips.
Well, it's not just that. My whole philosophy is just like, you guys need to be acting and conducting yourself like you are record labels. And so some of you have grown your own music business enterprises. And so you put yourself on tour. You build the lineup and you hire the merch person. And so you are in charge of what everyone gets paid. And so, sorry, if you are just one of many working for a record label, you just kind of being upset about what someone else is making has nothing to do with the contract that you negotiated, the terms that you came to for your deal. Fair enough? So I do agree with what he's saying.
Until then, shut the fuck up. So I know I got a little fired up in that one, but I hope I kind of covered this at least in a way where people can kind of understand this. What it boils down to is that it boils down to the contract for the bands. whether it's an artist or a venue sell. And the fact that in the majority of US states, it is illegal to take tips from one of your employees that is working off tips or getting tips on top of what they're already getting paid. Straight up illegal. And I don't think a lot of these bands realize that. And I think they're going to start getting into situations where they might get some merchandise managers that are filing labor disputes against them because of this, because it's not cool.
Yeah, and even if it was to my point about a contractor, right? Because you can have a contractor and you go, hey, I'm paying you this hourly. You're going to go on tour with us for a couple of weeks. You are still a contractor, though. And so that means the contract controls. There are not the automatic laws of being an employee under, let's say, the record label, but the employer, even if you are a contractor, still has to abide by the contract. So this always goes back to not only please have a contract, have a written document that documents what the terms are, but negotiate those terms. People get so scared. You know, this is why I'm just like, I wish I could be everyone's lawyer, because they don't know that it's normal and it's okay to negotiate for what is fair. And people are scared about losing opportunities if they just ask for what they think they're worth. And so half the time, maybe you get a contract, but it's a terrible contract. Or you actually don't get someone to help you, to review it, to understand it. And that's why I do what I do on this channel. We're all about music business education. I've been doing music since I was 4 years old, and I decided to go to law school because I wanted to learn how to protect myself in my own music career. So I did it the extremely hard way, but if you want to learn about the music business, how to protect yourself, I got you. Check out the link down below for my music business training, and I will see you in class.